listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm joined with my friend Kelly Matthews. She is a Reiki master, the podcast host of Enlighten and Elevate, mother, wife, and lover of all things spiritual. She is on a quest to find tools and knowledge for continued spiritual growth. It is her passion to teach people and children about the energy body and how the spiritual knowledge and holistic healing can help one better navigate the world. It is her belief that self-mastery, which she sees as unconditional love of self and others, is the way we can best contribute to bettering this world. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Astral. Thank you so much for having me today. It's an honor to be here speaking with you and your listeners.
Yes, it's such an honor to have you. I've been really excited about this. I've been following you for a little while, and I can just feel your big heart, even through the internet. And I'm just so happy to be able to create this beautiful episode with you together today.
Me too.
So, for those who don't know you, could you share just a little bit about yourself and your spiritual journey?
Absolutely. Well, my name is Kelly Matthews, as Astral said before. I'm a Reiki master and I have a podcast. I've had some spiritual awakenings in my life, which pretty much brought me to the point where I am now. I would say the first one, I lost my mother when I was 25 years old. She passed away from cancer. So that was probably my first real realization and beginning of a new understanding of what spirit was. And when somebody crosses over, that they're not really gone. I mean, physically in a human form, they are no longer there, but that they're with you. So that was kind of a huge transition in my thought patterns there. But later, I'm married and I have several kids. I would say the largest awakening that I had was December of 2019. I had found out that my husband was having an affair with somebody who I had believed was a friend. So it was like a double betrayal there, and it really rocked me emotionally, kind of pretty much, broke me. And I had to find ways to get through it. I knew deep in my soul that I did not want to stay angry. I didn't want to stay resentful, and I had to find a way to let that go. So I was kind of like searching for everything. And at this time, I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and, well, obviously stress. um, but I had a friend recommend me to start using the app Insight Timer. And I just through chance, which I really don't believe in chance anymore. I believe everything comes across your radar for a reason. I came across an Archangel Michael meditation that I did, and it was by Laura Michelle Powers. So I started to, since I had really enjoyed the meditation, I started to research her. And she had written several books on angels. So I started reading those and was reading one of those one day, and it's her book, Archangels and Ascended Masters. And there's a lot of channeled messages. And there's one that I was reading that really it was a catalyst for change in my life. And this is a paraphrase, of course, but it was an angel message where things in life happen for you, not to you. And I don't know what it was, but in that moment, I thought it really changed the way that I viewed everything that I had been experiencing. And from that point, I sort of dived into like understanding, like, why do bad things happen to good people? Why did this happen in my life? So I was directed to like Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss, Journey of Souls. This is an awesome series by Michael Newton. Your Soul's Plan, The Life You Planned Before You Were Born by Robert Schwartz, which is also a series of books, really helped me to start to understand my life and the things that I had experienced in my life in a very different way. And then all of a sudden, Reiki was on my radar. And at this time, I had no idea what Reiki was, had no clue. It was coming up in my book feeds, and so I started researching. I did what anybody would do, I guess. I put it in Google, and I started to learn that it was a Japanese holistic healing modality. And I wanted to take classes on it, and I found a woman who was about 25 minutes from where I live, and she was teaching it in her, I think, when I want to say I took the class in oh my gosh, I can't even remember. It was around COVID because I remember being in masks in the room that we were in together when we were learning. Um, but it really, Reiki for me broke me open spiritually as well. I had a whole different understanding of the energy body, of energy in general. And that really has brought me to where I am today. I learned about oracle cards, and it was just a really beautiful community. When you go through Reiki training with people like you, you really transform, and you transform together, which is a really cool experience. Have that bonding experience with the people that are around you, and then you get to also absorb and hear what other people's experiences are, because everybody feels, perceives, sees energy in really different ways, and it affects their lives in different ways. Like everybody has, like, I think, superpowers, like things that really are like amplified or elevated. And so it's so cool to just experience that. And Reiki was that for me, and huge in my healing journey, because at that time, you know, I was, continuing to look for ways to move forward. And Reiki's really good at harmonizing, releasing, having emotional releases. Very good for that. Working through any sort of blocks, even just balancing your energy body. Something that I didn't really understand or have an understanding of until I really dove into Reiki and learning about the chakras and the energy system in our body. I didn't understand that we should be clearing our energy fields, that we should be, that when, we're all vibrating and transmitting and receiving energy all the time. And, sometimes we go through some heavy stuff, or we go into a place that doesn't make us feel so good. And I had no understanding or concept of how to manage that, or even understand what I was experiencing. But now I do through Reiki. It's really a beautiful thing. So,
Mm.
um, that's kind of, and I do want to also say, because my husband and I are still together, and we've worked through the infidelity. And I know it's really weird for people to hear that. But we're actually stronger as a couple now than we were before. I'm stronger spiritually now than I was before. I have a connection with spirit and nature. And that's another thing that Reiki does for you too. You really start to understand how you are connected to everything around you, that we are all connected in this, this energy field, this life force energy. And I don't regret anything that happened to me, even though it was painful. Like, would I love to revisit the painful parts? No, not particularly. But I do want people to listening to know that if that is something you've experienced or you ever experienced in your life, know that you will not hurt forever,
Mm.
that it is something that you can get through. And please, if it would be helpful to reach out to me, absolutely, I would absolutely help you in any way that I could. Being that I've been there before, and this, I think, can apply to any life thing that can happen to people. But you can get through it. We can do hard things, right? As people, and we can do it. We can do the hard things. Sometimes the inner work is the hardest work that we can do, but it's the most rewarding. And it really does, you will see, I believe it transforms everything around you, in your life. So,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah,
you for
really.
asking that.
Yes. There's so much. I have so many questions I want to ask about Reiki, but one thing that stood out because right before we started recording, I was outside talking to my husband, and he was telling me this story about this musician, and he went blind as a child because his stepfather beat him so badly that he went blind. And I think it's Jim Croce's son. Anyways, he ended up learning to play piano with Ray Charles due to him having been blind and his dad being a famous musician. And so I was thinking about this, and now he's, a famous musician, and his sight actually ended up coming back later in life. But I was talking to my husband, what a beautiful example of sometimes people have to play this perpetrator role. And I think it's hard, and it's really hard not to be bitter and resentful. But then it's like when you look back, it's like had he not had that experience, he might have not met Ray Charles. He might have not learned to play piano. He might and then I was thinking about like some of these like shamans and initiates when they're really young, they put them in a cave where it's dark. And then their other senses become heightened. And so I was sitting here thinking about this, like that was kind of his initiation. And I think when we can look at that perpetrator role in that way of like it's pushing us, it's challenging us, it's stirring the pot, but you know, to some degree, it's like that. I think that's how we can find forgiveness and compassion is like we can be grateful for how those harsher experiences led us to the healing or led us to, being able to create our most beautiful art, So, anyways, I was thinking of that when you were talking about how, like, the grief or the challenge with your husband, is sort of what pushed you into that next phase of like initiation, like your spiritual awakening. Um, and I don't know. I feel like it helps give me more of a appreciation for those people that have to play those roles to activate us or to push us ahead a little bit on the journey. So I really appreciate you sharing that experience. So
Yeah, it's hard as a human, right, to understand some of the more difficult things that we experience in life, you know, and how that could affect us positively. But you're right, some of the things that really are the most transformative things in our lives, the where we see the most growth is through those challenges. So it's just like you said, it's just having a different appreciation and understanding. But I think once you go through something super hard, as the storms, because the storms in life are never going to stop, they're always going to come. But I really believe once you've gone through some really bad ones, had growth, you're able to weather those storms a little bit better. You can go into what I call your toolbox and, choose how you're going to move forward, what is going to serve you. And that's going to be different for each person. Everybody heals differently, everybody works through things differently. And I think that's also why there's so many different healing modalities and
right,
different things out there is because what works for you isn't necessarily going to work for me or even my daughters or my son. But, that's why there's so many things, that's out there and
right,
available. That's why I love talking about different holistic healing modalities because, sometimes it's a beauty. You can combine things and have beautiful experiences, or you use one for a short period of time and then later you come across something different and then you switch over to that one. I mean, it's just, there's so much out there. I just encourage everyone listening to just, be curious, have that playful curiosity and open minded, be really open minded and, just go out there and see what resonates with you. Because what resonates with you and your soul is going to be very obvious.
right. Yeah, I'm similar to you where I just sampled and tasted everything in the healing world and I found that each different modality had something that I needed. And it really was a journey. And they say like when the student's ready, the teacher appears. I would like graduate from one thing where I'm like, okay, I figured this one out. I've really integrated this one. And then another teacher would appear and I'm like, oh, I need help. Like someone would die or something, would happen. And then this
Yeah.
other person would just show up in my life and be like, okay, well, now we're going to start doing acupuncture to get through grief. Or now we're going to, study some plant medicine to
Yes.
help
I
like
love that.
work with the energies that have been brought up. And so it really was such an unfoldment. And so I love that it's so unique too, because spirit gives us what we need in those moments. And so somebody might be some people say Reiki is like the gateway, but for someone it might be herbalism and then they discover Reiki. So it really is just where are you in your journey? So um I really love Reiki. I really love its gentle approach. And I'm very blessed that my therapist was a Reiki master. So I liked the way that she utilized it. So we would have a therapy session and I could just feel that these things had come up, but they were still like in the field. Okay. So I'm like, okay, that was a really bad memory. This is really painful. And then she would lay me on the table and do her thing. So I thought that it was so good to bring it into the therapy world because we're digging really deep and we become so sensitive that I think having a gentle approach with dealing with those really harsher moments was so beneficial for me. But could you share some of the ways that you've been able to work with Reiki for your own journey or some of the ways that you've been able to help your clients or the people that you work with through some of their moments.
Oh, absolutely. For me, it's very good for, I mean, I use it to help with like anxiety, personal growth, healing for sure, and moving through blocks in my life. I have three children. So I use it with my kids. I have a 14-year-old son, and he's not super, spiritual or into a lot of the things that I am, but I honor and respect him in his journey. So I
Okay.
don't often do it with him. Sometimes he's open to things, but my girls are really, um, they're a little younger and they're definitely more open to it. So I have a daughter who's she's 11 years old. She's super empathic, and she has trouble. Like she doesn't even I'm helping her to understand how she's absorbing the energies around her, and even things if there's an argument or some tenseness in the home, siblings argue, or even sometimes me and my husband argue, right? Like that stuff happens. She's just super sensitive to all that. So I've used Reiki to help her. I've actually said to her this morning, because she's been real restless these past 2 nights. I said, before you go to sleep tonight, we're going to do a Reiki session with you. I'm going to lay you on the table and we're going to do it. It's going to help you. And it just really helps with helping her to, like, we do a lot of visualizations, like flushing things out that no longer serve us, like having it go into the ground, and like Mother Gaia is going to transmute that and that energy. um Really, a lot of people, it's really a lot of people like Reiki for balance, because we're in a chaotic world, right? And even in the workspace, just being alive in this time, there's so much going on around us. And, you know, I think just for balancing and harmonizing, and that's really where I see a lot of it. But a lot of people with going through some serious emotional things too will look to Reiki as like a supplement. Like I think it's a great supplement to therapy, because like you were just saying, you can talk through some really harsh things, and sometimes people don't know necessarily after that what to do with that. And you can go with either, like you were very fortunate where your therapist was a Reiki master, but you can go to a Reiki practitioner who can then help you sort of move through those emotional issues and harmonize and balance your energy systems. And I do want to say too, when I talk about being like a Reiki healer and practitioner, what I do is that I create a space for a person to ignite their inner healer. So they're actually healing themselves. They're working with their higher self and their subconscious mind to heal their own, whatever it is in their body that needs to be brought up and released, or rebalanced. And that is done in that way. It's always like a partnership, but in that way, which I think is really cool. But that's what I see my role as, like I'm just creating a space for healing to occur.
Yeah. That's interesting. I was reading the book. It was a book by Linda Howe, I think you say her name. And it was all about going into the Akashic records. And I had taken a class on the records and everything, but when I was reading this book, it had this one part that really stood out, which was when someone's doing Reiki, they're actually tuned in to the Akashic field. And that's how the energy knows where to go, because it's like that person's energy field is connected to the records. And so it's like moving. It always goes exactly to the place. But I had never viewed Reiki that way. I guess in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, Akashic Records, you have to say the prayer, but it was just one of the many ways that people tune in to the Akashic Records unknowingly, and it's the intention. You're setting the space, you're kind of opening up this gateway of like, we need to discover the disharmony and we need to guide the energy to bring it back to balance. And so the records is the light. It's the energy that's moving is coming from the record. I mean, you might not have studied it that way because I had never heard that. And I had taken a course on Reiki years and years ago. I've never done it on anyone really but myself. But I was like, wow, who knew? I didn't even think about it, but it does make sense because it is the field, right? The quantum
Yes,
field. And of course you're
totally
gonna
makes sense.
right bump into the records while you're there. And that's how you're gonna get, and I don't know if you get little insights, but when I would have Reiki done, my therapist was able to discover I was pregnant with my daughter before I even knew it. She was like, your sacral chakra is so like I can't seem to give it enough energy. It's like soaking it up. And I found out I was pregnant 3 days later, and I was like, wow, that's definitely probably why she said that. But she was sensing things. And now that I think about it, like when I'm in the records, it's sort of just these downloads of information. And I've had people be like, "Oh, I'm sensing a lot in like the your left arm," and it's something that I had never told them about. And I'm like, "Oh, wow, I've had some weird numbness in my left arm. So how weird that you know that." So I feel like as the Reiki practitioner, as you're healing, a lot of times there's going to be these insights, and it's like you don't know how you know it, but you just know that this is where your hands need to go next. You need to spend a little extra time on this center. Do you find that you can really tune into the different parts of them when you're working on them?
Yes, I have had a lot of insights when I work in someone's energy field, and it's actually mind blowing to me that you just described it as I had never thought of it as you're connected to the Akashic records, but in you saying everything you just did, that makes so much sense to me. But I
Hmm.
have been shown past lives of people, and
Hmm.
when I have gone in through certain chakras, um, I was working on actually somebody that I did Reiki master training with, and I didn't know anything about his past lives. We'd never talked about them. And he asked me to work on him, and I did. And I saw when I was in his throat chakra, I saw him being hung as a witch in a past life. And then as I moved through other systems in his body, I saw him. So before I set the session up, because I did actually a distance session with him. I have a lapis lazuli sphere, and I felt like just intuitively, I'm like, this wants to be part of this session. So I put it in with all of my arrangement of crystals, and what I came to find out was the reason why the lapis lazuli wanted to be part of that session was because it was used a lot in ancient Egyptian times, and in a life he was a high priest, and that so I was shown like his connection to sacred symbol and all this different stuff in that life, and that doesn't happen every session. Do I see past lives on people? It seems to me that it's something important to that person in that given moment. If it is important for them to understand, something from those lifetimes, that's when I get those messages.
Hmm.
But I've heard songs, like I've heard songs play when I've worked in people's field and then tell them the song that I heard playing. Um, I've, seen it's a really fascinating thing when you work in someone's energy field. It starts to, kind of blow your mind, all the different things. And what's really cool is the validation when I tell people what I see, hear, experience. I've even felt their emotion.
Hmm.
Like I've, you know, felt like a going into someone's energy field, having them feel guilt. I will like move in and I'm like, oh, I feel an immense wave of guilt, and of course, whenever I'm working on somebody, I'm like getting goosebumps as I'm telling you this stuff. But I just tell what I feel, what comes if I hear, see, or any of those things, and it always blows my mind. And I don't know why it does anymore because I've been working with this for a few years now. But when you get that validation, like, oh my gosh, I have had past life regressions, and those came up in those regressions, or this is a song that I've always that really got me through this, or it's really interesting to me, the things that will come through that I share with the client, and then how that all translates to them. And I really do my best to not interpret what I'm seeing, just
Hmm.
tell them what I saw, because what I'm interpreting may not actually be what it means to them, if that makes sense to you. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I have a similar experience when I'm in people's records, and I'm like, I'm just gonna have, and sometimes I don't actually know what I'm seeing, so I'll start to describe it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's my grandmother's whatever." I'm like, "Oh, good, I'm glad you know it."
right.
But so do you find that you have downloads when you're not doing Reiki too, or do you feel like when you're doing Reiki, it opens up some of your extra sensory perception while you're in that like field?
That's a good question. I do have downloads outside of Reiki, but when I'm channeling and I'm in Reiki, I get
Hmm.
the channel is open, and I'm also in that space
Right.
that relaxed, like I'm relaxed, the client's relaxed. And when you're in that relaxed theta state, yeah, that's where all the magic happens. The more relaxed you are and the more relaxed you can be, it really helps facilitate the space where you're going to be getting profound messages, and then that healing space, like your body. Like sometimes when I work in people's energy systems, I see the chakras just like come alive, like they just start spinning and spinning and spinning, and like really lighting up as I move through, because it's just like they just needed that little bit of like, that you putting that energy in there, and it just kind of just boosts everything, if that makes sense. Like sometimes I feel like it's just kind of like, and puts everything back in harmony again. It's a
Right.
really beautiful thing. It's so cool.
Yes, I love it. I've been thinking about it differently now. I've been in homeopathy school for going on 3 months now, and it has changed the way that I view the vital force. And I even have a deeper appreciation for Reiki now that I'm looking at the vital force, through this like intellectual, like studying it, and the different ways that we can work with it, and like why is it like sick in the first place, and where's the susceptibilities coming in from. But even in my class, there's certain times where they will recommend not taking a remedy, but going and having Reiki, because Reiki is so gentle. And there's moments where with the remedy, it might surge the vital force too intensely. So you wouldn't want that with like really young babies or people that are really close to crossing over, because that last pulse, it might be the only what all that's left of their vital force. So it can either bring them back, or they might cross over because they just like used it all. So my teacher was saying, in these moments, it's actually better to call in someone that does Reiki, because it is such a gentle practice, and it's really like meeting the person exactly where they're at. It's not bringing
Yes.
in a lot of like a new energy. It's like matching and like bringing them just to that balanced state, where the remedy sometimes can really trigger like a whole healing response. And and that's what we want a lot of times, but I feel like with Reiki,
Yes.
it's more subtle even. It's because it is just energy. There's no material anything there. It is just moving the energy, clearing it, and letting it guide, because it's like the Reiki always knows where to go. You can take the
Yes.
mind out of it. It's like your hands are going where they're supposed to go, and you don't have to overthink it. And it really is such a beautiful practice. And we know how to bring ourselves back into balance when we're in that theta state, when we're calm. We can ask those deeper questions of like, what is the root of my problem? Why is my vital force weak? And I feel like that's the thing with Reiki, like being with the records, it's such a good symbiotic thing, because when you find that balance, and you might see like, okay, well, this is from a past life, or, I had this image of you, doing this thing or whatever. And that might have been where the energy was first distorted. And so it's like sometimes just knowing, and that I think a lot of times with past lives, it really is just something about the acknowledgement of the past life. It can actually be the healing thing. It just
Yes.
discovering like the connection alone. And I think that's the thing with some of the past life regression and QHHT. These people will have like instant healing, and I'm like, it's because you connected the dots, and it's like something about the connection. It like builds a bridge, and then the energy flows. There's no like kink in the river anymore. And so it's like, there we go. But I feel like Reiki is really great for helping discover the kinks. Like, okay, this it's
Yes.
stopped up here. It's like we need to break open the dam here, because your energy is actually not flowing to the root. Or, it's like you guys are like seeing it, and then the person, it can open them up. That's just like the beginning, right? So you're starting to see, okay, I'm struggling with the root every time. That's the first place they go. They're seeing dysfunction. Now I can put myself in meditation, or have a past life regression, or whatever other modality, to try to see like, why am I losing the energy so quickly there? Or like, why is it not, flowing on its own? And so I feel like Reiki really is a good gateway in that way, as far as you can really see the energy field. And then that person can do the work to say, okay, where did the dysfunction start? You know?
Absolutely. And it also helps you to see yourself as more than just the matter, the physical body.
Yeah.
You understand the energy piece of it and how it all relates. And sometimes, like the disease, right, in our body is caused from emotion, but it's manifesting in a different way, and it's really, it's just a different, and I love that you're studying homeopathy because it's a whole different understanding and view of the human body, because you're viewing the body as an energetic, moving, vibrating system, where the Western model, the allopathic model, views really the body as like a physical, what physical is from the viewpoint of physicalism. And it's just different, and I'm not hating on Western medicine by any stretch, but I think that it could incorporate more, because we are human beings and we have an energy body, and that's just a part. You can't, how do you treat a human, how do you understand a human if you aren't treating it for all of its moving parts and pieces and understanding it and what its nature is, right? Like you can't,
Right.
really get to the root of some things. And I think sometimes in Western medicine too, like they're treating symptoms rather than root causes
Right.
of why things are happening. And there's so many beautiful natural healing methods that I've come across since I started delving down these things, like with just like, I'm sure you've seen, like with, you said, herbalism and all that. Like there's so many things out there that you can use, and even a lot of it you can do yourself. Like I started to learn about flower remedies through a guest that I had on my podcast, and it was
Right.
really cool. Like she had such cool things to say, and she's like, and this is easy, you don't have to go to my Etsy store to buy anything, this, and she just started like
Right.
rattling off like different things, like just so, she's like, it's not my, she's like, I'm not, she wants it to put the information out there so people can start to learn about it and use it in their life and have alternatives
Right.
to things out there. I mean, what work, like I said, what works for people, is going to be different for everyone. And I am not a medical professional,
Mhm.
but everybody knows their own body,
Yeah.
and what works for them and doesn't. And me personally, for me and my family, I would rather try anything, to not have to take a pill.
Right.
That's just my view on it. I would like to try to find a natural way to balance and work through different things. So that's just the way that I look at it. But everybody, that's going to be different for each and every individual. So
Same. I think that's the thing I love about a lot of the energy medicines and specifically homeopathy. And I was reading the Organon the other day, and he was talking about, he's like, it's the person that has the disease. And so that's what separates the allopathic from this model, is that they're treating the disease and homeopathy is treating the person. And so without the
yes,
person, the
beautifully said.
disease doesn't exist. It has to have the person. But what about the person? What is going on with them that made them susceptible to that disease? Because there could have been 10 people in that room and only 3 of them caught it. So what is it about those 3 people? It's the susceptibility, and there's different things in our life that can make us susceptible, like being in a heavy emotional state, grief,
Yes,
absolutely is gonna, and I'm sure when you're doing Reiki on someone that's grieving, you can see that their vital force has been hit hard. Grief will
absolutely.
definitely pull us really far down, and that's where having these tools to get through those moments to help keep that vital force flowing, it can actually help us recover quicker, and it meets us on all of the levels. So, that's the one thing with holistic approach. It is more of a holy approach because it's taking in the spirit, it's taking in the body, it's taking in the mind, and it really is absolutely all interconnected, because you can treat someone with allopathic medicine, but if they have something going on with their emotional life and they're not able to work on that, then that physical thing is going to continue to come back. And so that's where I just love how with energy, it gets to the spiritual, the root, where I actually do believe that it all starts there. And then it trickles down and it becomes more material to the point where it might actually manifest in our tissues and then start growing something. But I really do feel like the energy medicine helps us get to the root. It helps us start to connect the dots. And that's where we can get cures versus just taking these suppressants that we have to take over and over and over again forever. Um,
Yeah,
and I think that's where we get those magical miracle cures, but it's because the person has treated every aspect of the self, and then there's nothing for the disease to cling to anymore because the person is now healed. And I don't have anything against Western medicine either. I do think that there like emergency surgery, there's certain things where it's like I'm very grateful. Um, but I also don't go that way first either because I don't think that suppressing anything is going to be good for the vital force. I think we want to work with the vital force and guide it, and then the body will actually take care of itself. Um, but it took me a long time because there was so much fear from society, like with all of these things, and I didn't even understand it. So I really eased myself into that holistic approach. Like I would do it, but then sometimes I would still go back to Western medicine because I'm like, I'm just not patient enough, or I just don't know. Like this is probably some. But now I really have been, like, I believe in it more, I suppose. But that patience I give myself for the energy to work. I see magic happen in those moments when I'm like, I'm not gonna take the ibuprofen for this headache. I'm gonna wait. And then like I stopped getting headaches. Like I haven't had a headache since I actually like sat with why am I having this headache? I was getting them all the time. And then I got to the root of like where's this inflammation coming from? Like why do I have a headache right now? But suppressing it, it's like it took it out of my mind and then I never solved the puzzle. So because I just take ibuprofen every time. Um, but I love that about working with energy because it really is it's I don't know. There's some magic there. There's a lot about it that I don't know if we'll ever fully understand, but we can witness these experiences with it where we're like, it is backed up by something. It's like because it's validating itself, as we're watching these people recover from these things that they thought that they might have forever, and it's just like, I'm not going to discredit it because I can see that it's working. And so I feel like that is science, right? It's like you're
It
doing these
is.
experiments and you have a hypothesis, you're doing it, and then the person recovers. I'm like, that's the science. Even if we can't like say it's, oh, this happened and now that, but we can examine the results. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And there's so much more out there, I think, now. It's
Hmm.
becoming more acceptable now. I think people are more open-minded to it now. I mean, I know there's a person, her name is Anita Morjani. She wrote a book called Dying to Be Me, where she was in the hospital, had a near-death experience. She was stage 4. And then she actually she had she had an NDE where she met like her father on the other side, who she did not have a good relationship with. And she had this like tremendous healing and shift in her consciousness. When she came back, within 2 weeks, they were doing tests on her, and there was no cancer in her field. Her lymph nodes did not. When they did tests on her lymph nodes, the doctors were blown away. They were like, these don't look like the lymph nodes of a person that we would even suspect a
Right.
possibility of cancer for. So there is something to it, right? There, you can't be denied. I mean, it happened. They didn't know how to explain it, right? They couldn't explain it, but it happened. And that's just one example
Right.
of things shifting on an energetic level that caused a certain type of healing. But that is happening all over the place. There's so many interesting NDEs that you can listen to, that, and it's just again one aspect of it. A lot of people experience through, you had mentioned QHHT.
Hmm.
I've, Dolores Cannon, there's a lot of people there that, I mean, and there's so many practitioners, so much out there. I really encourage people to kind of dive into Dolores Cannon QHHT because there's a lot of healing that has happened in that space, and you can go with it. And she's written, oh my gosh, I don't know how many books, Dolores
Hmm.
Cannon, on various subjects. um,
Hmm.
but it goes back to, like, I think, like, our our willingness of spirit to believe. And if you think about it, like, just going to use Jesus the prophet as an example, but he could heal people too, correct? But I remember there's this one story where a woman just touched his robe and
Hmm.
she was healed. And he said it was her belief, that if she touched his robe, she was going to heal. And she did, because that was her belief. She
Right.
believed it in her soul that she could heal, that's what, and that's why she healed. He said, I didn't do it.
Right.
It was her belief. And that, I think, has actually come through. So you just have to have that belief. You have to believe that you can. It's all about, in this goes back to what we started with, intention. What your intention is. We are such powerful beings, and we are told that we are not powerful, that we,
Mm-hmm.
but intention, what you bring into every day, every waking moment matters. I mean, it contributes to not only to your well-being, but the well-being of others, or not only just in your immediate circles, but in the collective, you know, and it takes very little to shift to make a huge impact on the whole. And that's also out there too. Like there's a lot of things for people listening if they want to have like a more science background on it. Like there's a lot of people who've written about it. Like there's Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, oh my gosh, Dr. Joe Dispenza. You know, these are all people who bridge the worlds of science and spirituality and energetic healing in ways that it's really so fascinating. I mean, you can go any number of which ways with it, but it's out there, so people definitely you know, check it out if you need that, you know, for reinforcement. But I really do believe it's intention and just openness, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, a big part of my healing journey was releasing fear. And I actually felt like some of the spiritual tools were key. And once I overcome some of these fears, I had more trust in the process.
Yes.
And then also just having certain experiences on the journey where it's like it showed me, I was like, here's proof. And so I released the fear, I opened myself up to the experience, and then that's when the miracles started happening. But I do feel like it's like the fear that's blocking us the most. And I feel like Reiki and there's all sorts of homeopathic remedies, that match the fear energy, and just even going to therapy and really getting to the root of like, oh, this, I actually think it's the fear. I actually think the fear is worse um than any of these other symptoms. It's coming from that. And I just feel like fear is, you look at like that polarity of like fear and love, like you're just in kind of a lower state when you're experiencing that. But I feel like Reiki is a great way to work through that, because it's clearing the field. And so some of those fears are associated with the past. It's associated with these experiences that we've had, and we're actually not in those places anymore. And so when you can have this energy work and people are clearing the field, releasing some of those past experiences, and then you have that moment of, actually, I'm safe right now. Like I'm not scared anymore, like. But I feel like that's where having someone work with you in those dark moments to like find those root causes is such a valuable gift. And I really appreciate all of the people that do this work, because I think it's so valuable, and it's just it's a gift to the collective, because I think if even one of us can overcome fear, then that is actually going to change the collective as a whole. Even though I think sometimes we view ourselves as small, if one person can overcome that, then that shows us that anyone can overcome it. And so it really
Yes.
is, it's important. Our healing is important for everybody. And when we clear our field, when we're radiating from that higher vibration. I know it sounds like when you talk about vibration, people are like, oh, here's the heady girl, but it's true. Like it is a vibration. And when you clear your field and you're operating from that higher place, like when you're walking around the store, like when you're interacting with people, all of those fields are starting to touch your field, and it like trickles out. It spreads light. Like then you don't even necessarily have to be doing anything. You're just living. And now that you're coming from that higher place of love, because you've worked through the fear, now you're just like touching people, just like Jesus did, right? It's just a field. She
Yes.
just came into his field, and that's eliminated her fear. Then she believed, right? She experienced a miracle. But I feel like everything that Jesus ever did, I feel like we can do. So I love reading
Yes.
stories about the masters, because I think that they're just like that, the perfect archetype of like what we could do. They're like the avatar state of like, they knew they didn't have these fears. They knew who they were, like when they were born, like they remembered their journey, and they, had a mission. And I feel like they're great examples for us. And so I always love reading their legends and tales, because I'm like, oh, that gives me something to aim for. Um, so
I
yeah.
love everything you just said. I love that you said everybody can do it because everybody can. I'm
Hmm.
not just this super special person who can do the things. No, everybody can do it. Everybody has healing chakras in the palms of their hands. Anybody can be
Right.
attuned to Reiki.
Right.
You just have to learn it. You just have to, whatever is calling you, you just have to learn. And anybody can do it and
Hmm.
use it. And it's, that's, I think, was one of the coolest things, is that it's, Reiki is for anybody, but you can learn anything.
Right.
You just have to have that curiosity, that willingness, that openness. And you'll start to see, the more you put towards it, you start to see, like you said, it's like a magnetism. And
Hmm.
that's a way for people to understand how we all transmit and vibrate energy, right? So if you go out to the store and you're angry and you're, or you've got a angry look on your face, well, yeah, people might avoid you. They might, or they're like, oh, I don't know what's going on with that lady, but everybody knows what that's like, has experienced that. Or you just see the person with a smile, and that does bring you up when somebody smiles, or they're positive, or they say, hey, how's it going? Or, or you see somebody, you run into somebody who you just absolutely love, they're a great friend of yours. Like, everybody can understand what those feelings are like, so I just love how you put it that way. That was really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I took a little Reiki class years ago, and I don't consider myself to be a Reiki healer. It's just not my thing. Like, my healing gift comes through communication, but I use it on myself. So it was absolutely valuable. And a random thing that I use it on is my food. There was a point where I was really afraid to eat because they're like poisoning the food. And so I got to this point where I'm like, oh, I have to eat out. And I'm like, I'm just worrying about the food. Okay. I was worrying about like the water being polluted. And there we go. That's the fear, right? So how was I able to overcome this fear of food? I will put Reiki. So if I'm eating out and I know the water probably has fluoride in it, I know the food has probably been sprayed with pesticides and all the things. So what I do is I do the Reiki over the food and I bless the food. And I really think that this is like the root of like when people pray before they eat and all of that is like it's setting that intention. And I have
Yes.
found that like the big thing is that it takes my fear away and like I don't suffer as much from the food. And then I was thinking about like Dr. Emoto or whatever with the water, and
Yes.
like blessing the water. Now I haven't done the experiment on like does, praying over the water like help counteract the fluoride? But in my head it does. So I'm like it's fine. Even if it doesn't, like my body will know what to do. It'll know how to clear it out. But charging, like I can charge crystals with Reiki, I charge the water with Reiki. Sometimes I imagine like when I'm cleansing the house, I imagine certain symbols, like going through the air. And so I've actually just got really creative with it. And similar to the
I love
records, I'm
that.
like, I open the records and I'm like, well, today I'm dancing, today I'm singing, today. But I don't know. I just feel like that they're gifts, but we can use them in so many ways, like that are unique to us as individuals for what we need in that moment. So that's the one thing I love about Reiki is it's like kind of versatile, in that way.
Absolutely. And it can be used you can use it on your plants, Reiki your
Right.
bed. You can Reiki. I know there are some people who are therapists that use it. They Reiki. I've read where they Reiki their rooms before their
Mhm.
patients come in, or and then after their patients come in. So it's really you can use Reiki in a tons of different ways, in your
Right.
life,
Right.
and it's for everybody, I say, and the more people that know it and use it, the better off the world's going to be. That's the way I
Right.
think about it. Or just holistic healing in general. I
Yes.
really do believe self-love and learning to love ourselves, which we don't, you know, I don't think it's taught well, like self-love and learning to love ourselves for all the good and the bad. Because there's always things that you don't like about yourself, but that's just part of the journey. You have to love and accept yourself for who you are and love
Mhm.
and accept everybody else for who they are too. Right. And I mean, that's because the divinity we're all from the divine source creator. Divinity runs through each and every one of us. I explain this to my kids all the time. Like, even in the things you don't like, we're all from the divine source creator. You just have to learn and appreciate and respect. And that can be very difficult depending on the situation or the person or the thing, but it's just learning to honor and respect and not make those negative things a focus. Yes,
Right.
they're there. They're there. there are, negative things, dark forces, however you want to label it. It's there, but it doesn't have to be the focus of your experience, you know? And the higher you vibrate, the higher you try to really come from a space of love and understanding and compassion. I think that it's less and less of those things happen to be things you have to deal with. But I
Right.
mean, but that being said, life is life. You're going to lose people. You're going to lose loved ones. You might encounter or have different accidents or things in your life to overcome. I mean, and then that's just all part of the journey and the experience. But that's why there's people like you, Astral, people like me out there putting information out there, sharing and working with people in different modalities so they can just, have a better understanding of why we're here, what we're meant to do, remembering who we are,
Right.
remembering our divinity, remembering our power. And we are so much more powerful than, and we can do anything. We really can. I mean, there's so much out there about how your words change the neural pathways in your mind. I mean, it's
Hmm.
really fascinating and it's just words, but it's so powerful, so important. And there is stuff out there to support that. So that's why I think it's so important to just learn to move the energy, transform it, and try to find the happenings and all the things that we experience.
Right. Yeah, there was something that you were saying a minute ago where the quote, "What you resist persists," came to mind, thinking about like the things you don't like or the uncomfortable moments. But, something I've really learned when working with the records is that there is a path of least resistance, and you have a choice if you want to take that path. And that is more leaning into the flow. And like, if something's annoying you, the last thing you want to do is to give it more power, because if that's resistance, then you're like, this person's driving me crazy. You're actually giving your energy over to that person. And I see it all the time, and I feel like that's where like that quote comes in, but I see it a lot with Taylor Swift. She has these people that are like obsessed with her, and then there's these people that just absolutely hate her. And I'm just sitting in the middle like laughing at everybody because I'm like, you realize that you're literally giving her your energy by like sitting here talking about how much you hate her. And it's just like you don't have to do that. Like just don't resist it. Just accept that this person exists
Yeah.
and like you don't necessarily resonate with it and just float on by. But I do think that sometimes we can get really stuck in those places of like, this person is driving me crazy or whatever.
Oh
But
yeah, that's part of being human, right? Like I
right,
feel like, what, it's that's why I sometimes say it's hard to be human because sometimes it is, and our
right,
human I feel or I think like, oh my gosh, I'm too stuck in my human in this moment and
right,
I need to hit the pause and really like reflect and look at, okay, what am I supposed to be learning here?
right,
Or what is really bothering me? What is really bothering me about
right,
this? Is it
right,
really is it really her or is it really, and it's
right,
often, people will come to see that it's something unresolved within themselves. It almost always is,
right.
not that that
Absolutely.
person isn't irritating or arrogant or mean
Right,
or whatever it is, but and it took me until adulthood to really understand that when people are mean to us or try to tear us down or whatever, that it really is an internal thing for them,
hmm,
something, whether it be fear based or something they don't like about themselves that they then project onto you. And I didn't and I so I talk to my kids about that all the time because I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't learn that until adulthood. But now that I have an understanding of that, it really does help me as I'm moving forward. I'm like, because that you are always going to encounter different sort of social situations or people or whatever in your life, and I just have that point of view now. It's like, okay, well, what's really going on here, but it took me
right.
a long time to really
Yeah.
understand that. So that's really part of the reason why I started my podcast was, it's like I learned all of these beautiful healing modalities, insights, and through like a lot of the books that I read, that I was like, I just want to share this with
Mhm.
people because then they can use it on their journey, or maybe they learn it a lot earlier than I did, and then it can be used and helpful. I thought to myself after I went through this huge awakening, I thought, my goodness, 20 years ago, this would have been so helpful to me. But I
Yes.
do also honor and understand the journey that 20 years ago, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't meant to know it because everything that you experience too brings you where you are today. And I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't do some of the dumb things in the past, right? So I always tell people, because people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that or this or that. It's like, well, we all have to have like forgiveness for, of course, for everyone, but for ourselves, because sometimes when we're younger, right, it's like just going through your learning. But sometimes in those moments where maybe we didn't react the best way, or maybe we didn't treat someone the best way, is we were using the knowledge that we had in that moment and doing the best we could in that moment. And I'm not saying that that justifies or any sort of poor behavior or anything, but it's like, you got to forgive yourself for that. Now you know better. So you're not going to do that again, or you're not going to, I mean, that's just part of the journey too.
Right. And that's the beauty of being human. And I feel like I've finally got to this point where I just accept and love my humanness. And so even when I'm like feeling those energies where I'm like, oh, I am resisting, or that's a jealousy thing or whatever, I'm also like trying to bring love into those situations too, because I'm like, well, why would I feel that way right now? Like, what has happened in the past that might what is this bringing up for me? Um, and I just love being human. I feel like we all come from spirit, so we all had that point in our timeline where everything was just love and grace and beauty. But it's like it's super cool to be a human. And when we have these bodies, there are these things that we have to overcome here. And it is, Earth School is hard, but it's like I'm starting to really just love the process more. And I feel like that's how I
Yes,
know that I've hit like a new peak level in the healing, because I'm just now I can just laugh at myself in those moments. And I feel like when you look at like the Buddha, he's laughing, and like the gurus and they're just laughing, and it's because we give it all this power and energy, but really it's just like we're human. Like things happen. Like we're going to fail. We're going to fall on our faces. And it's really not about that. It's how we rise that matters the most. And and grace has been something that I have really had to learn to give myself. And I think that that's been such a gift. And I'm like, okay, well, if God can love me, for all of these flaws and like all of these mistakes, then why can't I love myself that way? And so I really loved in your intro when you wrote, it's like that self-love and the love of others, because I do feel like sometimes we have a harder time loving ourselves than others. Like somehow that's more accessible to us, but it really is just like, okay, I've made mistakes and I love them. I love my mistakes. I love all of the shadow parts of myself, and the hardships that I've overcome. And like it's just there's something so freeing, like I think you were saying, about self-love. And so it's just like none of the mistakes matter anymore, because like I love myself, and so I have to love all of those parts of me too. um and it just, I don't know, it's something about that really can bring you into the present moment of like who you are right now. um and I feel like that's a gift in a lot of ways. So I
it is
really
a gift.
I really love that and
Absolutely.
love your podcast. And I love that you had these experiences and you could see the beauty in them, and so you decided to create this space for others to be able to learn and share too. And it's so beautiful to watch people follow that calling and really reach their hand out for others, because of that it can be hard, and that that community support sometimes is exactly what we need in those dark moments. So thank you for the beautiful work that you bring forward into this world.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. This was a great conversation. I just had so much fun with you today, and I love your podcast too. I've learned a lot. It's really great too. I thank Jennifer Mitchell because she's the one that kind of introduced me to you and your podcast. So I
Yeah.
definitely honor the light that you are in this world, and Jennifer and all the beautiful souls in our little IG group.
Yes, I love our community. It's really nice to find other people that you align with like that have a similar calling. It just makes you feel less alone out there. Um, so it's been really nice to connect with you. Could you share the best way for people to follow your podcast or book a session with you, or just to kind of keep up with some of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, if they want to book a session with me, I have an Acuity account. It's Align and Elevate with Kelly as me. I will send the link to you that you can put in your pod notes.
Okay.
And my podcast is Enlighten and Elevate, and it's on all the platforms out there if people want to listen, or if they would like to be a guest or reach out about anything. I have a Gmail, Enlighten and Elevate with Kelly at gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm Kelly Matthews 840 on Instagram. I'm Kelly Matthews on Facebook. So really reach out to me for anything. And it's just my honor and pleasure to share information with you guys today.
Yes, and I'm excited to be on your podcast here soon. So we'll be creating another episode together. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and making this episode with me. I appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.